Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the session on Lead Where You Are, How Community Engagement Elevates Workplace Leadership. I'm really happy that you've chosen to spend the next 15 minutes or so listening to how community engagement and interactions outside of work can actually help you position yourself as a leader at work. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. As we established, we're going to be talking about leadership. And so it's essential for me to establish the fact that leadership isn't a title. Leadership is action and not position. This is a recurring theme that you will see in all that I'm sharing here today. You don't need a title to lead. Leadership is really about stepping up when not asked. It's about taking initiative, influencing others, and elevating those around you. Now, keeping this theme in mind, let's look at the agenda for today. We're going to be briefly touching upon my introduction, the skills that I've gained through my community engagement and what they are, the impacted work that I managed to create because of those, how to exactly create that impact, and how you can start. I hope that the short and sweet presentation that I have for you here today leaves an impact about how leading where you are can put yourself and position yourself as a leader for tomorrow. Let's get into the introduction about myself. It is essential that I establish my identity here today to create a connection with you, but also to establish the fact that I too do not have a leadership title in my designation. I am a global PM at Microsoft within the data center space. I'm an electrical engineering professional with about 8 years of experience, who is now project managing a global initiative for Microsoft data centers. I'm also a fierce advocate for D&I. I'm an avid dancer, and I also love to build on my public speaking profile. With opportunities like today, I'm able to achieve that as well. Having said that, let's get into the community engagements that I am talking about. I've listed some of my own community engagements, some of the actions that inculcated leadership traits in me to lead, to inspire, and to develop impact at work. Let me go through all the five that I have here on the screen to establish what kind of community engagements they are. I'm an executive leader for AnitaB.org for their Dallas chapter. AnitaB.org is an organization for women in tech and allies that brings together events, influential speakers, and influential topics. I'm also a student activities co-chair for IEEE Region 5. Region 5 does include the Dallas area, and having proximity to this region allows me to serve as their student activities co-chair. IEEE, as my fellow electrical engineering professionals would know, is a prestigious organization for electrical and electronics engineering. I'm also the ERG lead for Women in Data Center Services at my company. I'm a board member for the Letter Project. The Letter Project is an organization that brings together women to actually provide handwritten letters to those in need and to those going through difficult times. I'm an active public speaker at conferences and events, as is evident by today. All of these community engagements do have one theme in common. They allow me to curate events. They allow me to bring together speakers, allow me to think about influential topics of the time, day and age that have impact, and bring together communities of women in tech and allies to talk about these, to discuss topics. These community engagements give me a platform to actually develop a lot of the leadership skills that I will be sharing in my next slide. But basically, putting together events from conception to realization allows me the platform to explore my D&I side while also inculcating leadership qualities. Events are basically themed towards tech topics, towards social topics, towards other topics that are relevant to industries and women in tech. Now, let's look at some of the skills that I've gained outside of work that I actually applied at work. As I shared before, putting together events, bringing together speakers, attracting women in tech to come and attend these events allows me to develop influencing without authority, strategic planning, building relationships, public speaking, and stakeholder communication skills. As we all can imagine, trying to put together an event, bringing together volunteers who are coming together to give back to the society, strategically planning out topics, can put together this skill set that I have on the screen. Anytime and every time I take up stage, I sharpen my public speaking skills. Building that stakeholder communication allows me to keep all of my volunteers on track, allows me to ensure that we are all working towards a shared vision, and thereby allows me to curate events that are and prove to be a success. As we all can see, some of the skills that I'm continually mentioning, some of the keywords that I'm continually mentioning here are highly resonating with skills that we're expected to have at work, are some skills that are expected and associated with a leader. So let's look at the impact that I was able to create at work because of the skills that I gained outside of work. I was able to create my personal brand at work. I was known to be a reliable and trustworthy individual. I was known to be a self-starter. I'm known to be a public speaker along with being a creative problem solver, being energetic and adaptive while also being an authentic brand ambassador. Trust me, this personal brand that I was able to curate and bring impact to work was evident when I was receiving this feedback from my peers, my mentors, my management during the annual cycles that we have. And that is why I chose to share this impact with you all today. Now, let's look at a very, very important slide here. How did I create this impact? As you know, I'm involved with multiple groups outside of work. I always looped it in with my leaders. Whenever I had one-on-ones with my leaders, with my mentors, with my manager, I always kept them in the loop about engagements that I had outside of work. Maybe at that moment I did not have something to bring to the table at work, or maybe none of my engagements at the moment had any immediate impact at work, but I always kept my leaders in the loop. This was mindful. I wanted to ensure that my leaders knew that I had a self-starter streak in me. I wanted my leaders to know that I cared about the topics of the times. I wanted my leaders to know that I have meaningful and growth conversations with other influential women in tech and others around me. Hence, I was able to bring back some impact from community to company. And I'm going to share a small example of how I did that. I mentioned earlier that I'm an ERG lead for Women in Data Center Services, a small group of women that was brought together to discuss topics and to give them a platform to gather and share growth stories. Now, when this particular ERG was being formulated, and my manager was in the loop about these discussions, she was immediately able to suggest my name to bring together this ERG. Why did that happen? Because I kept her in the loop about all of my engagements. She was continually in the know about how I have access to speakers, about how I have the knowledge of the topic of the times. She was able to suggest my name as someone who could bring immediate impact when this ERG was formed, and I was then able to take charge as one of the leaders of this ERG. Hence, I was able to bring back impact from my community engagements to company and become a official leader for this employee resource group. My third and very important advice for creating this impact is no gatekeeping. Always share resources with peers internally and with others on other platforms such as LinkedIn when you can to create impact. Definitely be mindful of the context when you are sharing these resources, but do not gatekeep anything. This helps you continually stay on top of mind. It helps you create your personal brand as somebody who is well read, well educated about the topic of the times, thereby allowing you to create impact. Having shared this, I want to touch base upon my last slide for today as it talks about how you can start. We learned that leaderships begin when you show up with purpose, whether or not your job title says so. And so I have 3 small steps you can take on starting today. Connect with individuals that can guide you. Get yourself a mentor. Mentorship is really impactful, as you may have heard in such sessions multiple times. Identify volunteer groups that resonate with you and show up. I shared 4 or 5 names here today that you can reference again and try and get involved with those volunteer groups. See if the vision that they stand for, see if the events that they organize resonate with you, and continue to show up. No matter as a volunteer or as an attendee, things will start to create impact. Lastly, if you have an idea, build on it and pitch it to a peer or a manager. Ensure that you have the great context and great depth to this idea, such that when you pitch it to a supportive peer or manager, and if there is enough traction to it, it may get picked up and you may be given an opportunity to lead this idea of yours. There, I close my session now by saying, lead where you are, start now. Thank you for listening to my session and joining in today.